some board members who have other commitments who will join us when those commitments end, unless we finish before they get here. Which potentially could be my goal. Just to sort of summarize, this is our third budget review. We've had three public hearings already? Two public hearings. We have had scores of questions, probably numbering into the hundreds already, with hundreds of answers to a lot of concerns. So I think the process has gone well. I want to thank again the staff for responding to all those questions. I know that as you go through them, you know, when you get back 16 pages of answers, you know that people have put some time and energy in that, and we really appreciate that and thank you for that. And also to thank the commissioners who took the time to go through and get those questions out to you folks. So I think it's been a good process so far. So tonight we're going to be reviewing sections, help me Deborah, 5?
That's right there, 5 and 9.
5 and 9. And we've had questions on some of these sections already, and we're waiting some answers at this point, right? CIP and...
Yes, there were questions. We had to add to around 3.1, and that's questions about the CIP, and the responses are due tomorrow.
Okay, and we will get those out as quickly as they come in.
Yes.
Also want to thank Deborah for this gargantuan job of trying to put all this stuff together and keep it. There's a special line item just for stickies in our budget.
Yeah.
So thank you, Deborah, and the staff for doing that.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Superintendent.
I do have to.
Good.
I'm sorry. I do have to note that the administration did help out with the Post-it notes.
Okay.
Because I didn't have enough colors, so there is collaboration here.
That's a very good sign.
That's good, and we'll call it that, the Post-it note collaboration. That's excellent. Okay. So without further ado, I will go through. I'll just go down the line. If there are any questions on either sections 5 or 9, again, section 9 is the capital improvement plan, which some outstanding questions will be sent to us. Hopefully by tomorrow we'll get those out ASAP. As a last-minute reminder, the budget is due for adoption on Thursday, May 7th, right? And so we'll have everything done by then. I mean, obviously much more before then. So if there's any kinds of, and I've asked this before, if you have an idea that's going to impact on the expenses on this budget, you need to let us know. I've not received any at this moment, Mr. Ambrose, so we'll see how it goes, and hopefully we give you enough time to take care of any kind of changes to the budget. And I know it's an ongoing process, and your staff has been really good about getting that information to us. Thank you. Sure. Deborah reminds me that I need a motion to approve the minutes from the 21st.
So moved.
It's been moved. Seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carried. Minutes approved. Okay. So we'll go down the line. President White?
No questions.
Okay.
There were some questions that were not specific to a particular section. They were sort of global questions, and one of those had to do, I think Commissioner Evans was really interested in positions that were previously funded by grant and are no longer funded by grant, and what the status of those were, some of them being shifted to being funded by the general fund. And I just was curious about some of the positions I didn't realize were grant funded in the previous year. And one of those was librarians. Did we have all of our librarians covered by a grant?
Title I.
So the split now where 13 out of 37 and a half are now funded by Title I, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that very likely will be increased as, remember when we began this process that, we received notification from the Council of Great Cities about the increase in Title I because of our poverty. And so that will likely, that's where those revenues will be applied as they were last year. So you'll see that increase in the proposed budget.
Okay, thanks. And same question with Director of Budget, that was previously grant funded?
Yeah, it's a timing issue. You know, previously that title was Principal Management Analyst. That was funded by an efficiency grant. But as the Principal Management Analyst was promoted to the Budget Director with the impending retirement of the former Budget Director, so it's just a transitional issue where you know, they swapped functional roles as the previous person retires at the end of this year.
So in 2014-15, the Budget Director position was grant funded?
Yeah, it started off as the Principal Management Analyst, okay, and then was amended to be the Budget Director who was retiring during the year, who assumed some of those responsibilities that were previously supported by the Principal Management Analyst who was promoted to the Budget Director.
So at what point do you submit to the efficiency, this is the New York State Efficiencies Grant we're talking about, right? Every time there's a shift in what that grant is applied to, do we submit paperwork updating that and getting an approval for that each and every time?
I think these cut off here, yeah. There was an amendment that we had to submit there, but this was consistent with, you know, that when we began that into the grant, that I had a succession plan in place, and that we exercised, we developed a succession plan and exercised it without adding any cost, to the general fund. So the grant office at SED, was supportive of the title change. The functionality of it was consistent.
And the application to the grant. So it was a title change and an application to a grant.
It would have been
And there were several other, with that, it seems like that grant has been used to fund many various things, and, I understand that the grant was designed with the intention of having a broad spectrum, some things to increase our commitment to efficiencies, and some things as sort of rewards for those efficiencies. Is that accurate?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so there's been a lot of adjustments to the use of that grant money from time to time. And is it true that every single adjustment has been submitted as an amendment or sought approval and we've received approval?
It's true any adjustment, we received approval for. Some don't require a formal amendment if it's within a certain category, that was detailed in the grant. Others, you require, an amendment. Okay. And so in some cases, an amendment would have been required. If in others, it would have been a verbal affirmation that if it's within this grouping, that's consistent with the intent of the grant and they were support. But each step of the way, there's a grant monitor at SED, that support was obtained. And that's where, in the past, we've had some conversations about, could we do X, even with this body, and I had some other ideas about, books and those sort of things.
Right.
But we weren't successful in convincing them that was applicable to the purpose of the grant.
Right. So when is the latest date that a final grant monitoring event would take place regarding that grant?
That grant concludes at the end of October.
And so what's the latest date that we would have a monitoring visit or a monitoring analysis of it?
There would be a closeout period, so sometime after that, I can check with our director of grants for the normal closeout period. That's where we're at. I can confirm at the end of the grant is the end of October.
Okay, thanks. And then another general question I have is, could you give us, maybe Dr. Vargas or whoever is most appropriate, an overview of items that are reflected in the budget that we can anticipate seeing adjustments when the actual proposed budget is published? Yeah,
actually, we're developing a list. I spoke to the to the chair of the Finance Committee, and we verbally have detailed some of those. In fact, that's where Everton is right now. You know, he has it in a decent form, and we wanted to use the Finance Commissioner later today as a reflection, you know, is this understandable to you in this format? So Everton's developed that.
Okay,
Like, for example, you know, the volunteer coordinator position, right? So the other 3/4 of that position is reflected in our proposed changes from the draft to the proposed. That's included on the list as an example.
Okay, so the sooner we could get that, the better, because there, you know, areas that some of us are very concerned about and, you know, may wish to advocate around, it would just help us if we knew, if we could be reassured that certain things have already been addressed.
And that's exactly what Everton's thinking was, and that's why he's, you know, we've kind of verbally, you know, walked through it with the finance chair, but now, you know, he's kind of drafted out. The question is how much level of detail now versus later to give the board a sense of the changes.
Thanks.
No, sir? Commissioner Elliott?
Looking at the diversity initiative recruiting, if we had created the director's position, how is this program being handled?
Yeah, that's HCI. So there was an answer provided. Do you know, that question was listed here.
I
You just
also
want to.
ask questions publicly, whether they've been asked or not, so.
Yeah, I just was going to refer to what I had written, but the Office of HCI is partnering with the African American Studies and Latino Affairs, and they are recruiting diversity through using those people to represent RCSD in recruitment fairs. So they're trying to,
What people?
representatives from RCSD that are in those two offices. So they're partnering with HCI in order to represent the district and to recruit diversity candidates at the recruitment fairs.
What recruitment fairs?
They have recruitment fairs. We went to downstate this year. I can get a list of the fairs that we
Are
attended.
we going south to, because I'd be willing to go south
Right.
myself to some of the historically black colleges.
Right.
Because that's what was done in the 70s.
Right.
And I just had this conversation with someone in the community
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, we brought our students, these people up.
Right.
And so now those people that had been recruited are retired. And so I think that it's in our best interest to try to do that again.
Right.
There was board members that did that before, so I'd
Wow.
be willing to go down wherever we need to some historically black colleges to see if we can help to recruit to get African Americans up into this district. I think it's that important.
Yeah.
And so I guess what I'd like to ask is the funding that we have in here for recruitment, is that sufficient funding if we choose, excuse me, to make some trips south to some of the historically black
Right.
colleges?
We have just started again to re-engage with historically black colleges, as we saw this year with the career fair that we did for the students, and then we had the luncheon afterwards. So there is money allocated in the HCI
So some of
budget
those
for trips.
at your fair, you're saying some of those who were represented were from historically black colleges?
Well, we did, yeah, when
Which ones were those?
we had the students come to the convention center, and we had the historically black colleges represented.
Okay, so
Right.
how many of those, how many were historically black colleges, and what were the names of some?
We can provide you that information. I think all of them
Jingle
were from
sponsored that. We can get you that.
HBC.
Was that the fair that Councilman McFadden?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, so that wasn't driven by the district, that was driven by the city.
Well,
it was collaborative, right.
it was in collaboration with the school district.
Right.
Okay, all right. So, but I guess my concern is
Yeah.
that it's driven by a council person as opposed to it being driven by the city school district. So are we going to be able to, unless you all somehow initiated that and planned it, you know, together, it just seems to me that, in my mind, that sends a wrong message, that it's being driven by the councilman as opposed to being driven by someone here in the district.
So we already talking with each of our departments and also with Adele's department to make sure that next year we have the school tours, the HBC school tours, and also other activities to engage our black colleges in our curriculum work.
Okay, so curriculum, what do you mean by that?
We want to be able to have a partnership going so that we are able to refer our students, and our students will be able to go to some of those colleges for tours. Not only that.
I'm talking about in terms of recruiting those
Graduates.
students for teachers here in our district. That's what I'm referring to. Not so much the education piece, but how do we get people of color from a historically black college to be here in our school district?
So we're hoping when we open up that partnership that we will be able to start recruiting from those colleges, because right now, we're not making our presence known. If we're known and we're interested, we will start getting applicants coming from those
I'm
colleges.
willing to go.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm willing to go
We're
there.
bringing you
So noted.
with us.
Yeah.
We are bringing you with us.
That'd be a good
I'm willing
representation.
to go, because we got to get some strong diversity.
Yes.
We are, you,
The
I
good
think
news
you
is
asked the
that
question early on. We don't have a microphone working. I don't know.
I hear you.
I think it just started working again.
Oh, you could hear? We had some small victory. Our diversity increased by 24% of our workforce that we recruited this past year were African American or Latino.
Okay.
So that we are looking at the number as well, but remember that we are coming as a district at over 600 plus people were laid off, and we had to go through the recalling list. So we
I'm always ask this, I'm always keep this in the forefront, because we got to change this, because there's too much of a disconnect in this district with people who don't understand the urban environment. So I'm going to always put this on the table.
okay.
All right, so Office of Adult and Career Education Service, we got a lot of letters with regard to that. I guess some of the letters indicate that the program is being cut by 40%. What's the rationale for having that program reduced by 40%, if that's in fact the right question that I'm
Right, if you look at Section 6, page 33, it does outline the Office of Adult and Career Services.
No, your mic is not working.
Is my mic, can you hear me now? No?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll talk louder. Okay, maybe it's going closer. So it's, if you look in your budget book, page 6, Section 6, page 33, it outlines the program itself. And when you look down from the positions of 14-15 to the positions of 15-16, we want to note that one of the assistant principals has been restored. So it said that there was a reduction of 2, one has been restored. There was a review of the program and a realization that that position was needed. And then project workers, some of the insecurity with these numbers is that they are grant-funded positions and the grants haven't been retained yet. So it looks like more of a severe cut than it actually is. So when you see this paper and you don't have the explanation, it looks like it's dramatic cuts. But you'll see the project workers are grant-funded. It says right now that we had 4, we're going down to 1, but grants are they're being investigated right now, which may restore 1 to 2 of these positions as they come in. But the way we load the budget...
Let me just put it on the table.
Okay.
I'm not out to try to save anybody's job, just to
Okay.
give them a job.
Okay.
I want to make sure that the programs that we have here are
I
really
understand.
having impact. So,
Right.
Whether school psychologists or whoever comes in, that's not my concern to save their jobs.
Okay.
Grant writers or whoever.
Right.
What is the impact that they're
Right.
having on our children?
So there are some cuts for teacher school instructors, and it's because we reviewed the program. And we saw that the barrier, there was low attendance, and so what we did is we wanted to push a reset. And I have explained it in the answers really in detail, but the cliff notes are that we're going from a full-day program to a half-day program. We're going from 7 instructors that include 1 full-time counselor to 2 instructors that are going to do 4 sections half-day, then the full-time counselor. But the other half a day, we're going to give relevant work experiences and partner with REOC and other relevant agencies, because there's so many agencies in this community that can really help our adults. So we're just pushing a refresh on that button. It's going to be effective for kids, but it's going to be done more efficiently.
Okay, but it's more so for, this program is an adult-focused, excuse me, program.
Correct.
Okay. What's the age group?
They have to, students in this have to, have to not be enrolled in RCSD anymore. They have to go into the alternative program or the adult program. So we have students, is it up to age 21, Keith, that go to that program?
So with the TASK program, which is the new name for the GED, that's where many of the services are. The cuts that Ms. Bovard is talking about are really in the youth program, because right now we took a look and we saw that the classes were under-enrolled, the students weren't coming, so we really want to do a half-day program to tighten the instructional time and then give access to workshops, counseling services, work experiences, other courses, things like that. So that program is for 17 to 21-year-olds, and then above that is the adult education program, and we don't have any cuts slated for the adult education program.
I would ask, Mr. Superintendent, that be reconsidered somewhere down the line, because I think if we led it correctly and probably promoted it correctly, the students who we're having to drop out, particularly through your attendance initiative, we may be able to get those students in the am I saying the right, OASIS program?
Yep.
We may be able to get those students in the OASIS program, be able to help them in that area, maybe an opportunity to increase the program, but I don't know how effective we've been in promoting the program, so I would offer that for your consideration in the future, that those of our students who are dropping out, who doesn't feel, for whatever reason, family reasons, don't feel that they can do it, that we consider on a very strategic way this program so that, we can capture more of our students and they can be in some kind of, productive program that was going to enable them to do well in our community.
That is a great suggestion, and actually, which leads me to ask a question. Barbara, you here? Our placement services doesn't provide information to family about that program, do we? Yeah. Yeah. So I will ask you and Keith, one thing is that we get sometimes students that are 20 years old coming from different state or different country or Puerto Rico, and at that point in 1 year, we do know that it's very difficult to get a kid to graduate, and it's more suitable to when they stop at your office, if we have a space to provide them with those programs. So that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if we design it correctly, I think we could capture many of our students, So I offer that. My last question has to do with the Youth and Justice program that I'm very involved in. I understood that there were supposed to have been reductions by about 40%, but I also, was it 40% or 400,000, one of the two. In any event, I understand that there had been some renegotiation around that program. So where are we with youth and justice? Because I understand that that's also a revenue stream as well. So we don't want to reduce the program and then reduce the revenue stream.
Definitely. What we have done is we've restored. I think we're still working on a clerk, but we've restored most of the position. As a matter of fact, we are adding two more school instructors to the program to service a new wing at Strong Hospital.
Okay.
But what we have not done until this year is look at our revenue sources, revenue chargeback that we can get. So now we're looking very carefully at them. I know that last week I brought to the business committee the big picture. The big picture is to help us do exactly what you're talking about. Look comprehensively at all programs, cluster them in ways that they serve kids, and also make every effort to make sure that kids who are not successful in the regular school is in one of our alternative schools. And Youth and Justice is doing quite well. We need to, how do we expand or do whatever we need to do to support that program? I found out that they have 7 students graduating in this June. That's a big accomplishment. And we need to work together as a group to cluster our programs and also promote the programs so people know that they exist.
I just want to acknowledge Dr. Atu and Everton, a fresh set of eyes. In coming together, we realize we've actually been underpricing this service, and we'll be coming to the board, with monitoring our fee structure for others that access this program going forward. So I think that's a fresh set of eyes.
I would also remind you all, Medicaid is really tough, so, with them now, you got to dot every I and cross every T, make sure that we understand those laws such that, we are complying with them, because they will come in, and I think we've had some experience in the past around Medicaid audits in the district and in other organizations around the county. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Campos, you have any questions?
Come back, Brianna.
Okay. GC,
Did you give them the...
any questions?
Hi. Just a couple requests. The information from the latest round 3, there were a number of appendices that were sent as PDFs, and I'd like to request a few of those that the original Excel documents are forwarded if that's okay, Bill?
Sure, just for you. We always, the conundrum, we've had this conversation. It's a policy. We don't, because we don't want it manipulated, and but we certainly can do that for you.
Okay, so I just had, there were 3 of them. I think it encompassed 5 appendices. There was 2.10, 2.36, and 2.1.38. And there were 2 each in the 36. Yep.
She says...
Yeah, some of them didn't come out real clear in the PDF, so a little bit of wanting to see it better, as well as being able to go in and add and subtract and look at things via Excel.
Sorry, GC, some of that may be my fault. Because I'm so used to converting everything into a PDF to upload it to Board Docs, and then when I send things out, I generally do that because I don't want things changed or tampered for the same reasons. So I can send, I'll see what I have, and I'll copy you, Bill, so you know.
Thanks, Deb.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
Just one question about Section 9, and I realize it's a bit premature, but it talks about expenses for vehicles. And, I know, Dr. Rogers, you probably are working how to address the problem of transportation down to but theoretically, if you had to put together a hodgepodge of service providers, including Yellow Bus Company, I see that on page 4 of Section 9, it says vehicles, $705,000. Obviously, this did not anticipate purchasing additional vehicles. Would that be, and I realize it's all very preliminary, but would that be part of your plan to purchase additional vehicles? And of course, with that, hypothetically, you'd have to hire additional drivers, which would, of course, change another section of this budget. Can you give us some sense, because people are not going to stop talking about it, and they should not, what you're thinking, what your thought is thus far on this? Because it clearly is going to have a budgetary impact, I would think, one way or the other.
Yeah, actually, in terms of the budget, we are being very clear, and we are engaging in some conversation that we have to stay within the budget parameter that we have established. Now, there might be some flexibility, but that's one of the criteria, and we are going to be meeting, including with the IPS, because they're going to have to help us. But as you know, we heard this at the last minute. Actually, I was about to sign our summer program when I received the phone call from Bill Carpenter. So we, as you acknowledge, we've been dealing with this for the past 2 days. we believe, at least from some preliminary conversation, that our estimates are accurate for the kind of services that we want, that we need, and that we can achieve within the parameter of the budget. But the $700,000, no, that is not for the purpose of the or transporting students. So I'm going to ask Bill to speak to that.
Yeah, well, what's in this document here, is to replace some of our existing fleets, some, are primarily, replacing, buses that provide transportation for special ed students. So, the broader issue that you just raised, the scale is dramatically different. So, that was not, as you said, that was not reflected here in any way, and we're working through that issue.
Just sort of as a follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, but consistent along that same fact pattern, it seems that there are a lot of variables that we cannot account for, not by our own making. In other words, for example, we have to deal with transportation costs, which we don't know which way they're going to go. Additionally, I don't know which side of the ledger this ends up on, but we have to deal with a food service contract that we don't know where that's going to go. And then finally, and I think most significantly, again, none of this is our own making, but it seems that there's another huge cost lingering out there, and that's with respect to those 2-year receivership schools, for lack of a better phrase. Those schools have to get their act together. We have to get our act together within 2 years in order to reward the receivership. So if you think, and for those that aren't familiar with that legislation, the 1-year grace period schools, the schools that are persistently failing, they were given some money. But those 2-year schools, as you know, Dr. Vargas and Bill, as you know as well, they were not given any money. But we got to start working on them right away. So if you add the sort of ambiguous nature of our financial costs associated with transportation, food service, and receivership, those are huge dollars that we're talking about. And I just generally, what's the framework for putting together a budget when you don't know, or what's your perception? How are you dealing with these great unknowns? Any one of these things could dramatically affect the budget projections. Are we just thinking we're going to have to amend the budget later on? Are we taking into account where we're going to get this money from? If any one of those things should go in a way that we're not anticipating? I just think overall, it would be good to hear how you're thinking about these three great, and those are just three that I can think of.
Yeah, that's a great question. And first, the food services and the transportation, we are certain that if we act judiciously, we should be able to achieve providing transportation for our students within the amount that we projected the budget, and also for the food services. The other question is more, again, we received this as the last minute, and we were not anticipating this. We have been in conversation, and very soon I will come to the board, hopefully before the 7th. And I appreciate your question, and that I've been telling members of my team that we need to be disciplined. Like, you want to do everything. Believe me, there's so much thing that I want to do for our students and the people who work here, but at the end of the day, we're going to have some priority. And this school and receivership had to be in the forefront. Yeah. So I spoke with Bill yesterday, and that was my conversation with him, and I have been given some thought, but I'm not prepared today because right now we have been reacting, and I want to give you an analysis of where we are. The other thing that might give you some comfort, when you look at some of the schools, we have taken drastic action and put significant investment on them. Take, for example, School 3 that is not too far from here. That's an expanded learning school. And we are working with the University of Rochester there, and we have invested significantly in there. So some of them might need more than others, I did an analysis of what the school have today, and all for one have significant investment on them already. And I require, one of the things that we're looking is a summer learning. I have asked Ray Giamartino, who is in charge of that, to make sure that every child, for example, that could benefit, and in our case, it is my belief that 90% of our kids could benefit from an enrichment summer program. That no longer we can view summer school as a remediation. So there might be some dollars that we will shift from, again, back to your question about receivership, we had to view this school year as 365 days, and we had to engage the families. Because many of them value this school and the community as well. This is one that it will require a sense of urgency. Tomorrow I'll be talking to some of the school buildings, Monroe on school number 9 in 1 year, because for East and Charlotte, we already took some action. So kudos to you, we haven't been sitting and waiting, and when you see the parameters of what they're calling for, it's almost like we knew what they were being asking for. Like one of the things that they're asking is to expand the school day. Monroe, for example, we are going to begin school much earlier there in August. So we have been working on this, so therefore we don't have the panic that some people have said to me, how come you are now panicking? And it's when you look at the elements that the legislation calling for, many of them are in place. That's the good news. The bad news is
that's all right. That's
the bad news is that you're still going to have to invest more.
Yeah.
You no longer can say, well, I'm going to take 3 years to improve this school. Take Monroe and school number 9. I already put something on the table yesterday for school number 9. But I want to engage the school community, although the legislation allow us to act in a way that that we don't have to go to that level, but it is my philosophy, my belief, that you engage first and you see what you can achieve, because imposing won't do either. However, ultimately, I'm responsible to submit a plan, and I cannot go back. I can't say, well, the plan is that we couldn't come to an agreement or that we couldn't work things out.
Mary?
Yeah, so just a direct follow-up to that. One of the, a major area of concern is exactly that, the community engagement regarding response to schools that need improvement under the new receivership framework. And, you know, I'm really concerned that the school-based planning team role and the role of the local school communities in being involved and having a legal sign-off, you know, and process, ideally process, but at a minimum, we now have the, you know, the bureaucratic sign-off, but the ability for those school communities to really, really engage, in my view, is the driver for real improvement. And so the regulations, you know, as you well know, haven't come out yet from going through the regions, and I'm hopeful that that regulatory decision, you know, when they engage the regulation development process, that they are very strong about preserving a school community process, even if, you know, the school board's role is somewhat limited, or if others' roles at the collective bargaining groups are somewhat limited. I really, really hope, and I hope everyone, you know, sees the value of meaningful school-based planning and decision-making and supports and advocates for that. So one of the questions that I had, just shifting from that, but kind of linked, is it seems to me, you know, when we were talking about approving East High School, and, you know, we had some debate about the increased investment required, you know, I made the point that they came to us with a really, really good, solid, well-thought-out plan that involved a lot of stakeholder input and, educational professionals and, the Warner School involvement and so forth, and that the plan was really excellent, and also that they were willing to stand firm on certain limits, like that they needed more time to develop a good plan, for example, and that they needed more resources for reading teachers, for example. So, and I said that I hope that we would find the strength and the will and the, courage to insist on that for all of our schools. So transitioning from that framework, my liaison schools have a couple of priority schools, and then one of them is the Northeast Northwest campus. Another one is School 45. And I'm really concerned that, at least with Northwest, there's been a significant pullback in resources, so that we're seeing much less teacher resources in the core academic subjects. And I'm hoping that that is part of some ongoing reexamination, and that we can see some shift toward those core functions. I understand expanded learning is showing signs of improvement, that it's a valuable thing, but we can't neglect the support for our core academics, and respecting what our school leaders, and this is a more general topic, this isn't just Northeast, Northwest, in general, really working with the school leaders who are there and who are really seeing, carefully put together under constraints and under, lower resources than they would like, good things happening, and then we kind of pull the rug out from under it from such a faraway place. So that's just a real concern. In terms of resources, if Title I monies, because of the new poverty calculation and other reasons, are relatively increased now compared to what's being reflected in all of these numbers, I would really hope that those resources are shifted toward exactly that issue. Looking at the schools, especially priority schools, all of their schools though, because they all have needs, and really restoring, and respecting and interacting with the school building communities to meet their needs better, like we did with East. We should treat all of our schools like we treated East. And we should respect when people stand up and say, look, I can't do it with this. And they're not, it's not whiny or looking for extra resources, it's really fundamental needs. And I think the Monroe situation that you asked about, where you have increasing students, possibly increasing students with concentrated excessive needs being moved into the school, at the same time that we're significantly decreasing teaching staff, and particularly important teaching staff with bilingual and ESL ability, I mean, that's really catastrophic, potentially. So Title I, if we're able to use Title I for librarians, and I know in the past we've used Title I to fund all of the summer school staff, which was astounding to me. A couple years ago, we used Title I to fund our whole summer school program. Then certainly we can use Title I, whether it involves somewhat of a shell game, like you pay for the librarians with Title I, whatever, the expertise that's needed to make those kinds of shifts. I would really hope that Title I resources are focused on that, looking at all our schools like we want to support them like we supported East. That's commentary.
Thank you. Commissioner Elliott? Commissioner Conley?
Well, no, I have a question. When's the last time we used some Title I to pay for summer school? Did we use it last year? Last summer?
Yes.
Are you intending to use it this summer?
Yes.
For summer school? How much? Same amounts every year? Because I know a couple years ago, it's like the whole thing was paid for with Title I.
I'd have to, let me pull it together. I don't remember.
Like less than half?
I don't, of all the title money?
No.
No, of summer school.
Oh.
Of the cost of summer school, how much of it is funded by Title I?
We can provide that. I don't want to guess.
Okay.
Just one clarification. Title I, you have to be very careful that you have across the board. So, for example, I couldn't take significant amount of money and then use it for this particular school that I on the receivership. It will help us because we will have more, but you have to be balanced so that you don't shortchange. Like, for example, we used to do some great thing with Title I to support border education initiative that allow us to do it across the board. Like librarians, your school where your child go, when I first came here, they were receiving 1 day. or librarians. So, and one of the things that we did was that we went in and I said, how can we make sure that in an urban district you don't have a school without a librarian? 1 day per week. So, again, point well made. You have to be careful how you use those dollars.
I acknowledge that you have to be careful, but it seems to me in my experience, a lot of times that caveat and that caution is used to then not allocate Title I money in the best way possible. I understand it's complex.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Adams, sorry. Commissioner Coppins.
Forgot
Have a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you didn't have a question.
Help me to understand the capital spending plan, because I'm under the impression, when I look at the actual document for capital spending, that we spend like 30 million a year or something like that.
Half of that.
Huh?
Half of that.
All right, so what am I looking at 116 million? That was finance recommended budget. Or what are these totals at the, I'm looking at section 9, page 3. So what, help me to read this. If we're only spending $50
Well, yeah,
million.
that was my attempt to, be transparent as to the broad perspective. The exact component will vary, right? So the overall, like for the current year, we have about $17 million of sort of normal capital borrowing.
So
included in that big number, though, was we split, just to give a sense of scale, we split the 435 million, for phase 2 across evenly. That's not going to be the case, but I'm just trying to give a sense of scale as far as the potential in any given year. And that's what that's a footnote on page.
This includes the FMP.
Yeah, and there's a footnote, on page 36 that, that actually gets right there at the number 3. Yep, there you go at the bottom there. So that's, see the number 3, projected amount, and so those amounts may be shifted out a year, but it gives a sense of scale, right? And that's what I was trying to present there. The exact plan for that, has to be developed with the update of the master plan, but I wanted to give a sense of.
But the regular CIP.
Up above it, that's the 17, the debt financed, right?
That's the regular, so in that other document.
Down a little bit, 17, just go down a little bit.
Yeah, go down towards me. Not where here's where you were before.
Yeah, I think you were there.
You were there, yeah.
It's up first page.
It was right where you were.
Go up to the first
I thought you
page.
said page 17.
No, go to the first page.
Page 3.
Yeah,
Right there. See in the middle of the page, debt financed, via the CIP, 17,195, right? That's the normal,
Yeah, okay.
okay? That's the normal,
So that number is consistent with what's in the CIP?
correct.
Okay.
And then there's a detail about, by school, what we propose to do that.
Right.
And what we did this year is, and this came out of the, Commissioner Elliott would remember, it came out of it was a 3-on-3, now it's a 3 cubed, where the notion that the city and the school would better coordinate the development of the capital plan. So this year, as part of this process, we had the CIP coordinator for the city. He actually came and did the tours with the schools and poked and prodded with us, and wasn't there for all the meetings, but I believe it'll help, because ultimately we have to take this to city, the mayor and city council to get their approval, so they see firsthand, the sort of improvements that we're looking to do in our schools.
Yeah, how is that coordinated? Because in my executive staff, we have a relationship we have a program in the school city building, which is connected to School 9. There's some work that the city is going to be doing on that building, and then I look and see in our budget that there's some plans to do some work for School 9 as a part of the CIP. How is that coordinated with the city, and they're taking Baden and School 9 in order that we're not duplicating work?
Yeah, the two facility departments coordinate the work, and to the extent that there's work in shared space, they actually pay us to do it, and then we do it and get reimbursed from the state for that component. And then an enhanced level of coordination this year was, we anticipated some playground improvements anyway, so we participated with the city as far as where should they be, to help support the mayor's Healthy Weight Initiative, and they identified, schools 3 and 4, that they would like to see, and they needed to be refreshed anyway. And so they have some broader plans about how to do that, to connect with some trails and some broader effort around engaging children in the whole aspect of nutrition and physical activity. So there's a broader plan that this will be a part of.
Okay, thank you. And then on page 4, section 9, I'm always concerned that with regard to textbooks and library books, that we don't have enough money allocated for those 2 line items. It would seem to me that we, particularly with library books, that we may need to purchase more books, and also more books for our students. Section 9, page 4.
Deb tells me, it must be me. Deb tells me this mic keeps cutting out and she can't record. So I'm not sure this one is working either, Deb. But but this reflects, the anticipated demand that we're aware of at this time. Our textbook coordinator reached out to the directors, the subject matter directors. So that's where we are right now. In the current year, we did spend $1 million more because we replaced the science textbook, that hadn't been replaced for 12 years. So, and we invested substantial money in the current year. So,
can I just interject there for a minute? Do we have not any books that are that outdated in our district that we're using? I hope we do not.
No, this is a serious problem. When you look up, talking about librarians, when you look at the replacement, I want to credit Bill for this because we have been engaged in a practice for many years in which we didn't include replacement of textbook in our capital improvement plan. So we are cognizant and have been investing a significant amount of dollars, as Bill said, to all level, not just textbook, but also improving the stock in the library, which you've been asking the question about the quality and the diversity of the material that we provide.
The library piece, Dr. Tua may remember, but the process that we use is there's a CIP committee that's comprised of the 2 deputies to my left as well as other members, but we literally invite cross sections of the organization to present their needs, and the library came and presented, and their average age of the circulation was painful. So that's why you see an investment here.
So if we're talking about 605,000, how much was that line item in previous budgets?
Remember it was, I'll provide it, but it was painfully low.
Okay.
Do you remember? I think it's $100,000.
Yeah, it was.
I think it's $100,000. No, for libraries.
Right, and when you look at some of our library collections, I think that we could still invest more money, so we do really have that strong library collection. So I think we're looking at this in more of a 3- and 4-year plan, and that's what we've asked the department heads to look at, when you budget, to look to this year, but also look to future years, so we can build that strong collection in the libraries.
So the textbooks that we're ordering, are they, what percentage now will we be updated with our textbooks throughout our district?
So we just had a new adoption for social studies curriculum framework. So after we go through the framework, we will decide on what else to buy. But what we're doing mostly this coming year is mostly replacement. We're not doing a new adoption this year. Mostly replacement of textbooks.
Then we did that in the current year.
That last year.
Because I think it was around January of last year that the board adopted the new science.
But do you see why kids may want to drop out of school? If we're not providing them with the most up-to-date material, and remember, they now have social media,
Right.
so they know what's the latest out there. So why would our children want to remain in this school district that's not provided them with the resources that they need in order to be successful in this society? So we tend to want to blame kids for dropping out, but I'm hearing some reasons why they should drop out. They're not learning, or they're not prepared. That may be why we have only a 5% college career ready rate for some of our students, because we haven't provided them with the resources that they need in order to be able to compete.
The feedback that we received from the superintendent's initiative around, developing home libraries from the books that we give away, based upon students' interest, we've heard very good feedback from that. So we heard very good feedback from that, and a number of those books, though, to your point, we did have them they were sitting idle. So they were idle resources, that we put to use. We cleaned out our closets, and instead of having them, stuck on a shelf somewhere, we put them to use in families' homes, based upon grade level appropriateness, and then the teachers have picked out, the appropriate, books for their children based upon their interest. And so that's been, very well received. This past year we've done that a couple of times. We have exhausted our sort of backlog of things that were, we had but weren't utilizing.
Well, one of the things that, one of the good things, at least for this past year, maybe a couple of years, I have not heard anyone from the community saying that they don't have any books. So, but for years I'd heard, and we were being told that our students had books, but families were telling us that they did not have books. So I have not heard that from the community in the last year or so.
We have made a commitment to our teachers. Anyone who requests a book, and actually every year I send a letter saying, for this reason that you stated, that you can't ask a teacher to teach if you don't give them the tools that they need. And that have required culture shift in here, because that wasn't the case. Actually, there are people who still don't believe it. When don't believe my commitment, your commitment that I have made to our teacher in that regard, that you still, we had to be as a central office, and that's part of our customer services. What do you need? I mean, I visit probably as many schools as I can every week. And one thing that I always come out with, what is that the school need? And the needs are many. But we ought to be able, within our budget, to provide our children books. And I will say to you, and I want to thank you, because in this budget, we are going to send 10 books home for every child pre-K through third grade. And we also are going to provide 2 books for the other grade level, as long as, and also as well as other reading challenge that we're going to do through Rock Creek. So this board have invested in recent year more in books than you probably have in the past 10 years.
Commissioner Campos, one of those books for the pre-K is going to be focused on nutrition.
And some will be bilingual, Commissioner Campus.
Yes.
What's that?
Some will be bilingual.
Oh, how nice. Rafa loves his books.
I would recommend as a model, you all go over to the International Academy. I'm telling you, that's an amazing library over there. And then just one last question. This is in reference to IM&T. I see a travel budget of $26,000. Can somebody talk to me about that? We do that much traveling in IM&T? This is page 7 on section 9. That's a lot of travel. How many people are in the department?
Actually, I'm going to bring Anne Marie Lerner up to answer that question.
This is a really quick answer because it's actually not travel. It's the travel system, the Concur system, the new system. So it's the cost of the system, the annual cost.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Yeah, the actual travel across the district was included in the superintendent's summary, but we took out about $130,000 of travel across the organization, and you know, anybody who wants to travel with A funds is going to have to require their approval of the chief. So it's going to be a little uncomfortable this year, you know, when people do want to travel.
Yeah. I would just, in my last sort of soapbox statement, I saw in the news, I don't remember the company, where the CEO of the company reduced his salary to $70,000 and increased some of the salaries to $70,000. We got a lot of people in here who can have their salaries reduced to $70,000, and we'll have this kind of resources that we need in order to make sure our children had all that they need. That's my soapbox. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reduce the salaries to $70,000.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Especially that one I seen there for $231,000, or however much that is, that's more than you. So.
I don't like to enter into public negotiations.
I just said that was my soapbox. You have no spot.
Thank you, Commissioner Elliott.
Thank you.
Commissioner Campos.
In looking at the responses from round 3, good evening, by the way. It's good to see everyone. In regards to Monroe, so currently there's 1,113 students. So really there's going to be a decrease, which is down by 20 students, but we're still losing 5.8.
Yeah, I think
teachers.
Actually, Evanton could explain that because we sit down there with some technical challenging, which some of that position is central and now. Where did he go?
He just stepped out. He'll be back.
Oh, okay. When he come back, if you don't mind, he can.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, we'll
How about you, Barbara? You have any?
Sometimes you have to step out.
or step up.
I think one of the things that has brought some confusion is if you look in the book and if you look at the 14-15 enrollment, it says 1,050 something. The actual enrollment's like 1,130 is the number.
It says 13 on
Yeah,
the
there are
response.
several, you know, it depends on what day you look at it. I think the last I looked, it was at 130. So there are more kids that are there than I think it looks going 14 to 15. That being said, the enrollment projections for this year included the attrition piece, but also the kids in programs. If you look at the number of kids in programs, there's about 70 in things like All City, at RIA, and those. So that's some of it. The other is that the reduction is a couple of them are in special ed.
Wait, let me just stop you right there. What do you mean by they're in different programs such as RIA?
area, but they're enrolled in Monroe? Like,
Yeah,
help
so
me
what
understand.
happens is every student has a home school, and then when they go to a program such as RIA or All City or Young Mothers, they still keep their affiliation with the school, so they're on the numbers.
Got it.
Okay, so what we did this year when we looked at enrollment, we said, how do we ensure that we're staffing for the students that are at the building? So that's why there's sort of this different look at the numbers, and you'll see that's why the staffing numbers are smaller in some instances, and Monroe is one of those. So there's a couple of factors. One is that, the enrollment piece. The other is looking at the student needs moving forward. So we worked with Chris's team to look at what student needs were for special ed. So there's a reduction of some special ed teachers. And then when you take the program pieces out, there's not as many. So it's just kind of a tightening. I think one of the things that we do need to keep in mind is we've been talking about the receivership piece. So as we move forward, there may be ways we want to expand that, the opportunities and the supports for those kids, and that will bring us that opportunity to work with the principal in the building. Does that answer your question?
It helps me with the numbers.
Yeah.
We also, I bring about the bilingual coordinator for Spanish-speaking families. So that's
great.
That is now
reflected. Okay, good.
And nor is the, you know, the 75 million statewide, you know, for 2 years. You know, a portion of that would go to Monroe as part of the planning process. So once that's completed, we'd have to come back, when we know what we have from SED, we'd amend the budget to reflect that component.
Got it. Thank you. Building off of what Barbara just started, in terms of our bilingual special ed, and I know I talked to Chris about it before, but can you just refresh my memory? How is this going to work for bilingual students, and how do we expect to improve outcomes based on the new services?
If you could just explain or elaborate on what you're asking.
So how do you anticipate, based on diversifying the services for bilinguals? Actually, my question should be more open. How do you expect to diversify the services for our bilingual students, because they're not achieving? So how will your changes help them?
Just like for all the program changes we're making and the shifts we're making from integrated co-teach to consultant teacher, adding different types of special class ratios to better target the supports for students' needs, those same programs apply to our bilingual students. So we've, you know, where we're shifting to consultant teacher, we're shifting also the bilingual students into a consultant teacher model. So they're parallel as far as the program changes we're making for monolingual students, we're also making for bilingual students. And then working with the Department of L and the bilingual department, what that looks like. So if you have now a consultant teacher model with a consultant teacher pushing into the classroom, a special ed consultant teacher, a bilingual special education consultant teacher, how will that look when the SL teacher is also working in that room? So we're collaborating, because there'll be times when there are 3 adults in the room. Yep.
So how have you figured out how that's going to work yet?
That's what we're doing now. We're figuring out what that collaboration will look like, because sometimes it may be very beneficial for the 3 adults to be in there, or sometimes that might be an opportunity for the special education teacher. In a consultant teacher model, you have that flexibility to say, if the SL teacher's in there supporting those students, I can come in at a different portion of the day to support them as well, or sometimes it might make sense to have all 3 in there. And that's really the beauty of a consultant teacher model. It gives you that flexibility for the adults working directly with the students to decide what is best to meet their needs, and what's that going to look like this week based on what's going on in the classroom, and what's planned for next week when we're doing different activities. It might mean a different level of support from those individuals. So that's going to be new for us, because it's you know, the model right now with the ICOP model, you don't have that flexibility. Sure. Consultant teacher model, you'll have that flexibility, and it works. And this is a great time to be looking at how will that flexibility really apply and improve how we deliver services with the SL layered on top of that, with the changes to Part 154.
I would love to hear, once you guys do collaborate, how that's going to work and impact the students.
Okay,
That would
definitely.
be
Yep,
great.
when we
Thanks,
can
Chris.
actually, we can frame out what the model will look like.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, please go.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm a little concerned that it seems to be generalized, and I think when you come to special populations, meaning our Hispanic population, or our African-American population, or our international population, that we're generalizing it too much. And I don't hear in the conversation how there is to be, given the diverse culture, how that's going to be addressed. Now, maybe you can't do that, but somebody has to be able to do it if we're going to have these diverse populations to succeed. So, you know, we've got to think in those terms. When you have a 65% people, 85% people of color student population, the way in which you approach it has to be different. I think that's why we're losing so many of our kids. You know, particularly given, you know, a lot of things that, you know, in the urban environment that they have to deal with. So I would also like you to make sure that you're thinking in those terms, not just in a general term, but in those terms. Again, if you can't do, I think you got to have somebody in there who can address those issues so that we can save all those issues.
And what we're doing, I mean, I'm working very closely with Jerome Underwood to ensure that even in our special education programs, our special classes, no matter what model or program in the continuum, that we're also looking at, you know, how to infuse culturally responsive interventions into the curriculum. So I'm working very closely with Jerome on that, and, you know, that'll be reflected in the...
That's going to be key.
Yep, and that'll be reflected in the professional development we're going to be rolling out starting this summer and next year. The culturally responsive piece is going to be part of the special education professional development plan.
And I'll just say this, and I'll conclude. I mean, we just got to make sure that people understand this is difficult work. It's just not something that you come in and think you're going to do. It is difficult work. And I think if they get the paradigm for that, you know, it would be more effective and more efficient. I don't get the sense that people understand really that the work that we do in this district is difficult work. You know, so I just, you know, share that.
And believe me, I get it. I know it's difficult. And with an effective professional development plan, incorporating the culturally responsive interventions and curriculum into it, it's ongoing work. These aren't going to be one-shot professional development opportunities. They're going to be ongoing professional development with loop around to quality control. Are we seeing evidence of what we're providing professional development? Are we seeing evidence of that in the classroom? So it's an ongoing professional development cycle.
Because these are my brothers and sisters, and I want just as good for them as I want for myself. So.
GC? I'm all set. Thank you. President Waite's all set? Okay.
I had a couple.
Where's she?
Well, she wasn't done. I saw that.
Down, I had a follow.
No, you're good, Chris.
No, I actually,
Oh, you had
yeah. So, my follow-up on,
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's
We
fine.
just wanted to follow up on what you did.
Go for it.
he's sitting down, so it doesn't matter now.
No,
You could keep the conversation.
Chris, you got-
So, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Chris.
So, following up on the English language learner, special education, shift in the model, the division between direct versus indirect consultant support, is that, do you expect that to be all direct in that context? Or, I mean, I guess I shouldn't assume. Can you talk about that?
In the consultant teacher model we're proposing,
Specifically for the English language
for
learning
the English,
population, yeah.
we're looking at a direct service for all our students with disabilities. There will be very few students, just like there are now, that receive an indirect level of service of only. We have a handful right now in the district, higher functioning students with disabilities. That's the model that work. The consultant teacher that we're proposing for all kids is primarily a direct service. There might be an indirect portion layered on top of that, but it's primarily direct service. And when we're talking the service delivery, when the SL teacher and this consultant teacher and the gen ed teacher are all working in the same classroom, that's a direct service to students. We're not talking an indirect level of special education at at that time. That'll be a direct support in the classroom, special education teacher pushing in.
Do students' IEPs specify direct versus indirect, or is there discretion?
There is discretion in regulation. You can just put consultant teacher. The recommendation is that you also on the IEP identify the intensity, direct or indirect. Our standard here in Rochester is our IEPs will clearly say to the parent that it's a direct level, direct consultant teacher. It'll say direct/indirect consultant teacher, or it will just say indirect, depending on what that student's getting. And it will put the duration, frequency, the number of minutes per week for each subject. So it'll be very clear. Our IEPs won't be vague and just say consultant teacher. They'll be very specific to the intensity as well.
In the case where you have direct/indirect, the reason I'm asking this is because I've heard practice it has been really more indirect and in some people's judgment not effective, not helpful to the student. And that's anecdotal and that's, whatnot, but it's driving this question of, is there clarity about indirect versus direct? And if it's supposed to be direct, and if your assumption as a leader is that the vast majority of this work is being done in a direct setting, but maybe there's slippage, that's what I'm trying to make sure that there's not slippage where there's more clipboards and talking at, professional to professional than you may think is going on, and how do we prevent that from happening?
And to quality control that, because the expectation that's been rolled out is that it's a direct service to students. So where an IEP for some students might have direct with a component of indirect, that needs to be clarified very clearly at the CSE meeting what that means. So the parent leaves that meeting knowing that my kid's going to get mostly direct, but there'll be times during the week when the adults are talking about what that student may need in a subject where a consultant teacher may not be pushing in at that time. So it should be clearly discussed and documented in the minutes of the meeting. It's also, there is a level of professional judgment and flexibility to determine this week I need to meet with this student's teacher, so I'm going to do this amount of indirect service, and they have to maintain a log of that service. So it'll be very clear to monitor if a teacher is spending most of their time indirect, which they shouldn't be, and that'll be monitored at the building level by the case, and it's an expectation that's been rolled out in the professional development to the teachers that we've been training. We'll be doing another training this Saturday, all-day training at St. John Fisher, which will just really get into the direct level of service. And then when you have students that have direct/indirect, what that looks like and how you plan for that. Because, we can't look at what we're doing now or have done in the past with consultant teacher because we haven't done it right. So moving forward, we'll have quality controls and checks in place to ensure that it is primarily a direct service to kids.
Thank you.
Yep.
On this point.
Oh, you want to follow up?
Yeah, and very briefly, Mr. Chairman, I was at a meeting with Chris and Dr. Vargas within this last week, and I just want to repeat what I said at that meeting so that everybody else can hear it, because I think it's important. Very briefly, what we were doing was not working. It was the definition of insanity, and for us to continue to use the model that we were using, affecting countless kids, black and white, rich and poor, just totally ineffective, was, I wouldn't say criminal, but borderline, not even borderline, negligent, because it's been going on for so long. So I made it very clear to some teachers, colleagues, people who are committed to this struggle of improving our educational outcomes. I made it very, 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 very clear to them that personally, I supported what Chris and Dr. Vargas are doing, and that we all need to get behind it, because what was happening to our children over decades was completely unacceptable. And in my view, it seemed to be, in my humble view, it seemed to be benefiting adults more than children, because clearly the children were not benefiting from the results. The outcomes did not suggest over decades that model was working. Now, Chris and Dr. Vargas understand this, that we will be watching very closely your outcomes, because the whole point of this shift is to make sure that our kids get the kind of services that they need. And if the outcomes don't suggest that, we're not going to wait another 2 or 3 decades like we did the last time and allow it to continue. But I applaud you both and everybody who's working with you for this gargantuan, this huge step that you're taking to improve the outcomes. And you're doing it with under much criticism, because I think some folks don't want to shift the way they've been doing business. So again, I applaud you both and everybody who's working with you for the effort, because it's about time. Thank you.
And just to follow up on this, and then I'll be quiet on this piece. Should every special education student have an IEP?
Definitely.
All right, so I was at a school last Friday advocating for a parent, and her daughter was considered special ed in kindergarten. She's now in 3rd grade. She never had an IEP. And so now the principal is saying, well, she really doesn't need one. Well, part of the problem is that nobody communicated that with her. And so are we addressing those kinds of breakdowns within our system? Are we really in the system, in addition to, see, we can do professional development, but then if nobody is holding people accountable, then, it doesn't work. So are we able to, somebody from your staff go to school by school to make sure, or however it's done, that every child that is supposed to have an IEP, that IEP is in place for that child, for that student?
And that's just basic overall monitoring of our system, and we do that. Every building at the onset of the school year, every student is cross-referenced to make sure that every student has their IEP that should have an IEP. So we can at any point go into our IEP direct system and identify all the students with disabilities at a particular building by grade level, by classroom, and figure out who needs an IEP. Another piece is every year at the onset of the school year, every case provides the IEPs to the lead teachers that then roll those IEPs out to all the other teachers working with a particular student. So everybody's fully informed of who has the IEPs in their classrooms. That's regulation. We have to do that every year. But we continually monitor and make sure that every student that has an IEP has that IEP being implemented.
Well, even if they were supposed to have one.
Even if they were supposed...
And I don't know how you go about doing that, but, this would happen.
What school?
In kindergarten, 58.
We could check for that, because that's something that would be very, if you could put, not the name right now, but if you can give it to me, and I can make sure that we follow up.
She's doing well, and that may be the case. She may not need one now, but she didn't have one in kindergarten, so there was no follow-up on that. There was nothing in place, so I will certainly...
Yeah, that would be great. You can send me an email.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because with the way we track the data, it would be very hard for a student that needed an IEP. The system would be telling us that there wasn't an IEP for a student.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. So I know. Sorry. So in terms of Oasis, can you just walk me through what your anticipated changes are, why the changes, and so they're staying at Hart Street, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I thought I heard it and
Been a lot of
they were
rumors.
moving. As well, so let's take the programs there first, what the changes are, and then I just want to delve into family literacy program just to better understand.
Right. So the programs are remaining intact. I think the first thing that I want to say is none of the trade programs, all of the trade programs are fully intact. So there's lots of information that has been said that's not completely accurate.
That's what I want to understand.
So as we were explaining, Keith is the chief over those programs, so he has a more detailed knowledge of it. So do you want to just go through it step by step?
I can go over a basic overview, and then get my voice back. And then some specific questions you had, you mentioned about the family literacy programs and stuff. I can talk a little bit about that.
Yep.
And we can get further information from Paul Burke to answer the questions better. So looking at the OASIS program, the main shifts that we're doing with the OASIS program for next year is in the youth-based task, which is the new name of the GED. And we're retooling the program, we're reconfiguring the program to really match what the enrollment numbers have been. So for example, a little bit of data on it, we expect to serve over 400 youth in the program, but right now 160 are actually enrolled, and about 50 are attending class 60% of the time or more. Okay, so that's why we've decided that model we have, it doesn't seem to be working because students really aren't engaged, they're not coming to class, and it's not the same ones every day, so it's many things around. So we've decided to make the half-day model, provide support services, really define what an active participant is in that program, and then look to see where the enrollment trends are, and if those get into capacity, then we'll look to increase in the budget or whatever the programmatic needs are, just like with the rest of the district for programmatic needs. So that's the youth-based program. I haven't noticed or talked to Paul about changes to the adult-based task, ESL program. I don't know of any. They might be minuscule if there are. The career programs are staying the same. The family literacy programs are currently grant-funded, and so a couple of the grants are no longer. And then we're looking at Office of Parent Engagement, I believe it's Title I funds, to be able to support more of that. But there's low enrollment in those too. And so what I've really, the big thing we're looking to do with OASIS is to make OASIS a part of the community response to these populations that need this support. And we can partner with Ibero, we can partner with the REOC, we can partner with many other organizations to provide these supports. So I'm working with Paul and the rest of OASIS to see where the wedge that we're supporting, how we can really fit into the other community services.
Okay, so with the family literacy, it was at 3, 15, 17, 45, and 46 this year. So where are you projecting it to be next year based on the grant?
It will remain at School 45, and that's going to be funded through the Office of Parent Engagement. And then there was 14 total parents involved in all of those programs.
Yeah.
So I think we can accommodate parents at School 45. And then again, I think it's really important for us to reach out into the community. There are many adult literacy programs that we can partner with for our families.
Because that's, I mean, one of the things, if you look at, success for students, as well as onboarding families. The family literacy model is such a strong one. So it's a shame, and I remember it was at 22, and it was I think they had like 7 parents. It's not like it's a huge number. My question would be, what's the impact on the community when you have that and the students' achievement when those parents are learning English as well as working in the school? So I just get concerned that we're going from, I understand that the enrollment is terrible, but I wonder if that's more on the execution in terms of trying to get those people, to get those parents. I mean, I'm just trying to better understand because it's a model that's proven that works.
Yeah, so I just want to add sort of an additional thought to this whole budget process. I've been working with the Anti-Poverty Task Force, and I've been asked to I'm co-chairing the education work group. So we've been having these conversations about adult literacy as one of the barriers, and we've been looking at the research on how to coach, someone like rise out of poverty. There's actual steps that you take and what resources they need to be able to do that. So, and there's bridges you create for them. So all of this is being discussed, but what's exciting to me is it's being discussed as a community with housing, with health care, with education, with job and workforce development, and with justice. So this is a new approach that there isn't one entity that has to do it all. This is our community, these are our resources that we have, and how do we work together to really weave that strong safety net of support for our families and help them reach their dreams and fulfill their potential. So that conversation is, beyond the walls of the school, which is great. It's reaching right into the community where the heart of the matter is. And we're saying, how can we work together to address exactly what you're talking about?
So in looking at the vision for the future of this, so tell me what you're thinking in terms of partnerships, how are you going to rebuild family literacy?
I think, well, the discussion and the task force work is beginning in earnest now with the formation of subgroups. We have to give recommendations by the middle of June to a design team, and then, it's a process going from there. But what is really exciting is that the partners are at the table, and it's, Monroe County, it's Mayor Warren, it's legislators, Joe Morelli, it's United Way. It's a very strong community outreach to really figure this out together.
And I would be lying if I didn't say that it's really sad that we're going from, how many parents would you expect at 45?
Well, right now, none of the schools have more than 3 parents actually involved, so it's really small enrollment. So, it might raise a little bit if we can focus efforts and really rebuild that, and then, we can look at other grant opportunities too to see if we can find additional funds in Title I or something like that to support a second.
Because what I found is that what was so important was the buy-in of the principal.
Oh, okay.
With this particular program.
Okay.
So, with that, recommending it. Right, yeah.
Right, recruiting and
positions
outreach.
available for parents to be able to work in the school, that was a big part of it. So
And I think, too, we're changing the focus of OASIS a little bit, because OASIS was kind of a place that received lots of large, medium, and small grants for lots of different programs, and then those grants would come and go, and I don't know, we want to be more strategic with OASIS. We want to, Adele and I are really looking at the metrics and the enrollments and taking a look at the numbers and saying what programmatic services make sense for OASIS and how can we collaborate in the community to really provide these supports.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, when it comes to OASIS, the focus is going to be trades as well as adult education when it comes to learning English. What else are going to be those are the 2 dominant ones that and of course GED.
Sure, so you've got, and there's many other services that are, but you've got the adult GED, the youth GED, the trades program, you've got the ESL, and then family literacy is a portion of it. But so that ends up, I'm wondering if I'm missing one, but I think that ends up
Making a connection.
What's that?
Making a
connection is one of the activities that they're looking to do. So those are the mid-level activities, but the ESL is going to be strong. Yeah. The trades, we're not losing instructional staff in the trades education program. And both of the task GED, we're retooling a bit, but we're still keeping our focus on what to do effectively.
Yeah, you're going with the numbers versus projected, right? It was projection of 400. They were down to 100, and it was really 50 kids showing up.
Right, and the thing about we need to think about, we have a tendency in school districts to think of enrollment in terms like we're used to enrollment. This population is very transient, as we know, and so it's rolling enrollment. People come, people go, people enroll, they drop, they do whatever. So that's what's the difficult thing to put into perspective when we think about an OASIS snapshot is, yes, right now there are 161 students, but possibly in September, 15 of them might have earned their task, and we don't have that as current enrolled students. So that rolling number makes the metrics a little difficult for the way we were used to looking at them. But from the snapshot data I took when we did some work with Paul, it really did whittle down to what we learned from the data was we need to focus on getting students there, providing support services, and that's why we cut the program to half day, because you can actually count hours for supports, workshops, work, a lot of other things, because we were having these students sitting in class all day long, and that didn't seem like it would work out.
So it's really a more efficient design of more focused service for kids.
Yep.
And it was time to push a refresh button on the program.
Oh, sure. No, okay. It's super helpful. Thank you very, very much on that. And one last question.
Thanks, Keith.
I don't know who this would be, but in terms of the psychologist, what is going to be the change in workflow, and who's going to adapt what it is that what they did with the big cuts?
Well, there's only 3 cuts in positions. 2 are moving Yeah, 3 cuts in positions. All 50 of them will be in the schools. They will be working in the schools, but they will be reporting to Chris Scenario's office, and they will be under direct supervision of the zone directors and working closely with the cases, the social workers and the counselors in the school to provide the social and emotional support that schools need.
Yeah, let me clarify, because there have been some assertion that so first, we do know that we are shifting 2 buildings, so they are mitigating things in terms of the impact. And there was a proposal that we are no longer, we're taking into account the input that was given to you and to us, and that was that we were going to have a mobile team unit, and the impact to that would have been that you would have some buildings without the presence of a psychologist in that building as much as it is. So we are making an adjustment to that. It was correct when some people told you that there were some people that were going to be moved, not necessarily to central office, but they were going to be shifted to different location in terms of crisis. I do think that the psychologists, the collective wisdom is one that I subscribe to, and that is that they sorry about this, I apologize.
Okay.
That is that they were telling us, you know, it makes no sense if you have a crisis to send people that don't know the kid.
Right.
And we do, and there is time when you do need a crisis unit, but I do believe that the advocates and the part of the psychologists and all that they made a great case, and one in which I'm shifting my recommendation to you that we had this mobile thing.
Okay. I'm done.
Did you see last round? Okay, we're going to do last rounds of questions, guys. I wanted to give Commissioner Evans and Commissioner Powell an opportunity to ask their questions first.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just make a statement. I've been through all these packets. I've been through all that stuff, and this being my budget area, my 11th budget, I think, 12th budget. The administration has made their proposal. I'll send a note to my colleagues along with the superintendent and copy in our finance folks and detail any changes that I like to see happen. I mean, we've been through the questions. I've been through the budget. Overall, I will say I think it's a very great budget. I'd like to see a couple of tweaks to it, obviously, minor ones, which I'll detail out in writing, and then I think we make a decision from there. I think we've asked just about all the questions we could answer with all this stuff. But I do want to point out, and Bohan, I don't want you and your team to get upset if you know, if we make if we say we want to make modifications to the budget, because you know it is a draft. And I don't anticipate making anything that's going to be in the millions of dollars in terms of recommendations, but I just want to maybe put some stuff out there and then give the administration an opportunity to react to it, and then see if there's ample support amongst my colleagues to make any necessary adjustments. I think they all add up to less than $1 million.
The only caution would be that you would need to do that ASAP, because if we're putting together...
I'll send it tonight. I'll send it tonight.
All right, great. Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Powell, you're good? All right, last round of questions, folks. Commissioner White, President White, you all set?
No,
Commissioner Adams?
I would just say I need the responses to other questions before I can put forward my comprehensive recommendation.
Okay,
so I
and
hear
they're
you on
working.
the urgency, but at the same time looking at it comprehensively and trying to be balanced.
I'm just trying to keep
and
us...
also that request that I made for what's already addressed. I made a request, Mr. Evans, that they update us as soon as possible about adjustments that may have already been made based on concerns and
All right, that'll be helpful.
And just to repeat, you know, Everton will, if Commissioner Cruz is willing to spend all the time, we'd like to use you as a sounding board to review how we've outlined it to see if it's discernible.
At this point, given that we've got to have this done by Thursday, which is a week from tonight, I would just go ahead and skip me as a step, send it to the board, and if there's any questions, I'm sure that there'll be some, emails going back for clarification, but yeah, skip me as a step, and then we can get it to folks earlier. That's fine with me, so no problem there.
And just let me modify mine. I have shared some. The superintendent won't be surprised in anything I say because yesterday I shared with him some of my concerns. So it won't be anything that's earth-shattering.
Okay. We're going back down the line. Final last questions. Commissioner President said no. Shannon's all set.
I just want to make sure, we had a hiccup in the budget, last year's budget around special education. Yeah. Have we addressed, are there going to be any hiccups in this budget once we approve it? And I recognize that, it is a budget and we don't always know what may come up. But how do have we made sure that this is this budget is a budget that is, and I'm going to say a word, and I apologize, this is the only word I can think of right now, with integrity. Is this a budget with integrity?
Like
and
last year.
I apologize if anybody's offended by that.
Everything that happened last year was normal. What happened is that you had a system in here that didn't even have position control. And my budget team deserved the utmost credit. This Board of Education, and even on the sum of my tenure, and that's why I asked Bill to join me. Again, you were operating in a district that you didn't even know how many people work here. Now we know. What happened last year, and I just want to be clear with this board because we need to be transparent here, talking about integrity. It is that in any budget, that's why we put contingency money, and which we did. And there were two areas that we told this board that we were making significant change. And one was the CTE, which we continued with the president of KIF and Adele that are working on that, and also the special education program. The Board of Education, as long as the superintendent, need to understand that the special education area tomorrow could change because you have, as I had tried to explain it, Chris have outlined a terrific plan, but that plan is as good as the execution through the Committee on Special Education. And also, we did have an increase of students with special needs. So there was two reasons that the budget changed. We got an increase in special education students. That is not lack of integrity, and that is not prudence in our part. What I have said to you is that today you have more integrity in this budget that you can. Actually, I just recently found some position in School 29 that were in the budget, but were not in the budget. And one of the things that I have the team right now, which you have heard, President White, from many people about this position control. I want you to ask any organization to tell you that doesn't matter and that they don't have a team of people in an ongoing basis looking at that. So I do believe, to answer your question, Commissioner Elliott, that the step that we have taken have improved the system, but there's always something could happen. Like take, for example, receivership. It's quite possible that we're now going to have to go into the budget to adjust the budget because of the dollars. So let me be just as clear. You had a budget that was balanced. Actually, you will go as Evan to. My first year here, I brought him to my house. And I said to him, what the heck is going on? You cannot find a single report with accuracy here. And is it true or is it not? And he gave me some comfort. And I began to work on your behalf to make sure that you have the budget with the kind of integrity that I see that you sing in this city. Actually, I recruited Bill for about 7 months to do that work. And this Board of Education, along with the superintendent, was told many things that were not true.
Thank you.
Thank you. All All right. Commissioner Campos, you're all set? GC, you're all set? Yes. Okay. Well, again, I want to thank the staff, Bill, your staff, Mr. Superintendent, all your staff for putting together a good budget. Obviously, it's not everything we all want, but it begins to address a lot of the major concerns that this board has had over the last few years. And as a comment in terms of the integrity of the budget, I think what, correct me if I'm wrong, is that I think what Commissioner Powell was alluding to is that the numbers are based on data, based on true budget figures, so that when you look at this, you get a good sense of what we really are spending, what we really have coming in, and I think that's what part of I think what you're looking for. So and that's an important part of any budget process.
So can I just ask this question,
Real quick.
Mr. Chairman? So how much money is in the contingency fund? Do we have a contingency fund? How much is in the fund balance? Is that what, do we have both? Okay. Well, what I mean is money that we can use in case we haven't budgeted for certain scenarios.
Yeah, there's the contingency, which you would normally build in any budget, that you account for the potential for any unforeseen or unplanned occurrences. And we have $5 million plus the contingency that's in the East High budget, which is another $500,000 or so. So it's about 5.5 over 10 about. Then in addition to that, we have, fund balance within the organization. Then there was a question around this. The difference is to the extent that you use fund balance, you'd want to be deliberate and use that in the development of the budget. To the extent that you use that during the year, that would be something that you would want to avoid beyond the extent that you have planned to use it, during the budget development. Now, if, God forbid, something happens and lightning strikes, or we have, another 1,000 kids come from wherever that we didn't plan for, that's a major unforeseen occurrence. But as a discipline, that's the approach, that we should take. We have used, fund balance, and it was, discussed last year as part of the audit committee, that we used a piece in the year that concluded, to purchase some buses and to advance, retirement costs we didn't amortize. So we were deliberate about the use of that, in prior years, and I would want to continue that sense of discipline.
How much money is there in the fund balance?
Go ahead, Evan.
How much money is in the fund balance?
It's I believe the unrestricted fund balance about 27 million.
No, we'll provide it to you. It's about 14. The piece that Everton's referring to, there's a portion of it that's committed, okay. but we could break it out for you. But you would want the unrestricted general fund balance. We'll provide that for you.
And so the $5 million that's contingency for this budget, is that
it's built in this
normal amount of that?
Well, I personally, when I came here, I think it was $2 million, and I said the very least I could stomach was 5, okay. And I think I'd like to see it bigger. The challenge of having a larger contingency is then it also means that you're making cuts at their reductions at this time to make a greater allowance for those unforeseen occurrence. So that's the catch-22.
The other thing embedded in your question, which is a great question, if we had a financial problem like was alluded on the budget, we wouldn't have to touch the fund balance. And let me repeat, we didn't. It's irresponsible, particularly for some people that had knowledge about budget, to say that you have a budget problem when we didn't touch our fund balance. Right. That would have, which is what, but we did not last year. Every year since I've been in this board, we have gone to the contingency budget. Why? Because of what Bill just said. Every year we set a significant law. Everybody will tell you that even $5 million, it is very low when you have $788 million. So what anyone with financial background will tell you that what we have done is prudent, It's appropriate, and it is incredible when you have within that kind of budget with a margin of error of less than 1%. So 5 million out of 788. And I said this to you because I do think that sometimes we do put the district at risk. Like, for example, I know for 2 months in this community, people are telling, well, but you now have financial problems. When the district, by the way, this district right now is better in a financial position. That's why we're not laying off people. That's why you are in program. And I will repeat that I will appreciate if the board can work with me to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Now, if we have a problem, it's okay to put it up there and to put it on the table. But when you don't make our problem, and this is not where the district need to be right now. You need to be proud in terms of your budget. You do have even a very healthy fund balance compared to the other districts should something were to happen. We are, I believe, going to be within target that we set forward through your approval to make sure that not only we have a fund balance, but we continue to build it.
We're externally, I was just saying, we're externally evaluated each year by the rating agencies, and they reaffirmed our position.
I just want to also acknowledge the work that Dr. Vargas, you do in terms of advocating for more dollars on the state level for the school district. I think that needs to be highly commended. But my question, what I'm also thinking is that because we're having these legacy costs to always go up, somewhere down the line it would seem to me that it would have to impact the fund balance. You're doing a great job on the state level getting funded for us, but and you don't have to, it's just a statement I'm making at this time, but somewhere down the line it just seems to me that our fund balance is going to be vulnerable.
Correct. That will be the last comment. Again, thank you very much. And if you have any last minute, Commissioner Evans, you're going to be sending stuff out tonight.
I'll send it tonight.
Please get that to us, either to send it directly to Bill at this point. And that being said, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all.
14.5, Everton just pulled it up on the internet.
Thank you.
Not to be touched.
Wherever you can find a place.
No, just stay out.